Welcome to the Life, Death and Happiness podcast. My name is Daniel, and in each episode we delve into the most personal and profound stories from people living with Fanconi Anemia. It is my honor to introduce you to today's special guest, Faith A. Barb, after this. Welcome to a new episode of Life, Death and Happiness. With me today I have Faith. And Faith, welcome, first of all.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you actually want to join me, so I'm just happy you're here too. So, can you start out of telling a little about yourself? What's your name and when were you diagnosed? Just so we can get a overview of who you are.
Sure. My name is Faith, and I am currently 48 years old, from Rochester, New York in the USA. And let's see, I was diagnosed pretty late when I was 43, I think. And it's kind of interesting how I fell through the cracks and nobody identified, Fanconi anemia until so late, because I did have lots of medical issues all my life, and they seem to point, now retrospect, looking back, and they seem to point to FA, but at the time, of course, I don't know why no one thought of that. But anyways, I was finally diagnosed in 2019 when I'll back up just a tiny bit to 2018, and my mom actually suffered from and then died from pancreatic cancer. And at that time, I had already known that I had the BRCA2 gene. I didn't realize that I had two BRCA2 genes. But I did know the one, so I did have a geneticist, but my brother was worried about his family and, the genetics of pancreatic cancer and things like that. So he was digging into our genetics. We had the same genetic counselor who was actually a friend of ours previously. And so I don't remember every detail of what happened during that time, because it was really a difficult time period. But we were digging more into my genetics, and my genetics doctor had said, I think you might have this thing called Fanconi anemia, which he had mentioned to me a few years prior, but we never tested for it because I wasn't interested at that time in knowing for sure, because I really didn't know that much about it, and I don't know, I just wasn't interested. So we actually went through the testing, me and my brother, and we both have it, both two BRCA2, that's how we, I guess, have FA. Also during that time in frame, I got colon cancer, found by accident, kind of, because I was getting because they knew about the BRCA2 gene, the one gene. I was getting colonoscopies once in a while, and they found a small. Wow, this is a long story. So I had
It's totally okay. You have to start
I had
somewhere, yeah.
polyps over the years, but then they found this one sort of flat one that she couldn't remove, and said that she would rather have a surgeon remove a portion of my colon. And she actually said the words to me, and this still haunts me and kind of messes me up to this day. Don't worry, this is not cancer. We just want to take it out. Well, guess what? It was cancer. And the minute she even said, don't worry, this is not cancer, I knew that it was cancer. Like, I knew in my body and my soul that it was cancer, and I pushed really, really hard to get it done as quickly as possible. Although my heart doctor was, everybody was pushing back and saying, you need to have this evaluation and this evaluation. and all this other stuff before we can do it. And I'm just like pushing for it to, I'm like, I want it out of me now, 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 now.
Mm-hmm.
So, I waited a little bit longer than I wanted to. Um, and actually, it wasn't just one little portion of my colon. It actually ended up being half of my colon,
Ah.
which they did tell me that up front. They said, well, with your history and blah, blah, we
Mm-hmm.
want to take, but me and my husband were like totally thrown for a loop when we went to that surgeon appointment because we figured she was going to talk to us about removing a little section. And she's like, oh no, here's what we're going to do. And she showed me a picture and was like, I'm like, wait, what?
Wait, well, when
That's
did
what
we
they
talk
said
about this?
before.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so we were both shocked. Me and my
So,
husband
so,
sat in the car afterwards.
so
What
it
was
was
that?
around the same time that you got the diagnosis.
Yes, and my mom had just died.
Okay. Oh, shit. Yeah.
So it
So
was
sorry to hear that,
really,
by the way. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And so we were shocked and, kind of like thrown for a
Mm.
loop. But anyways, I went through the surgery and the recovery for that kind of surgery on your colon and taking out that much, which they also took my appendix out, which because it was right there. I don't know.
Mm.
And it's quite longer than I thought. It was ended up being like a couple of months, and I wasn't allowed to move around that much, and I had to give myself shots every day for, I guess, uh, I can't remember what it was. I think maybe for coagulation, like blood, so your blood doesn't um thicken up or something. I'm not sure,
Yeah.
but I had to like not do too much activity. So that's why I had to take these shots for quite some time. I was out of work for probably 3 months.
Oh,
But anyways,
that's a long time. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it was a pretty, I mean, I didn't it
And also,
was
you
not
went
what I
into
expected.
thinking it was something minor. That was the
I
whole frame
well,
of thought to
yeah,
begin with.
at first I thought it was just gonna be like a little section and it was
Mm.
gonna be like no big deal. I had surgery before and it didn't sound like it was gonna be a big deal, but then when they said, "Okay, we're taking out half of your colon and you may wake up with uh uh I can't remember what it's called, but it's when you have a tube in your colon and
Okay.
that's how, they said, "Oh, but it probably won't be permanent." Luckily, I woke up and did not have that.
Mm.
So, actually, I'm working it's all working just fine down there. So, I was lucky,
That's a good thing.
I
Yeah.
mean, that I didn't have any long-term effects from it, from that.
Mm.
Uh, but anyway, so it was all around that time. Oh, so when they did take it and they did the pathology on it, it was cancer.
Okay.
So I didn't find out until after I had the surgery.
At this time, you knew you had FA, but were you in contact with
No, I
doctors
didn't
who?
know I had FA
Oh,
either.
oh, you didn't know. Yeah. Okay.
It
Okay.
was
That was
it was being that was also being evaluated. Like,
okay.
I got the result right around the same time-ish, so I can't
Mm.
remember if I found out, like, while I was recovering from that surgery or right before. So it was
Okay. So it's around that time. Okay. Okay.
all
Yeah. Yeah.
in the same time frame. So, yeah, then I started, I live in Rochester, but I started going to New York City
Hmm.
to Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, because they had some FA, more experienced FA people there. So
Hmm.
I have a hematologist there. So I travel by train for about 7 hours to get to those appointments, when I go. So,
Oh,
which I
yeah.
like the
That's
train, so it's fine.
oh, but it's still a bit of a trip. But you're talking to somebody who comes from a very, very small country. Okay.
Oh
It
yeah.
takes us like 5 or 6 hours to pass through the whole country.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and this is within my state. And
Yeah,
this is
I
within
know.
the same state, 7 hours on the train.
We
So,
often make fun of it because when we have family who lives in the opposite end of the country,
mhm,
we see them maybe twice a year because it's such a long drive. But when
yeah,
I've been a lot to the US because I know a lot of you people, so when we're there, we often maybe drive 2 hours just to get a good dinner, and we don't even think
yeah,
about it.
yeah,
But here, we wouldn't go visit our family for maybe 6 or 8 months if it took a 2 hour drive, because here we just used to having everything
mhm,
close by. But
yeah,
as soon as we enter the States, like, nah, it's only 2 hour drive.
yes,
It's kind
yeah.
of,
I
no,
it
sorry about
would be
that.
hard to get your mind around it,
Yeah,
probably.
yeah. But 7 hours in the train to get there, yeah.
And I actually have to go there every 2 months now.
Okay. So, so at this time when you got the diagnosed, how did that land with you? What did you went through when you got that diagnosed?
When
For a lot of people, it's life changing, but a lot of the FFs I talked to about, they have known about this since their childhood. But you
yeah,
come in like you said, 43 at that time.
yeah. Um, I for me, it was more kind of a relief in a way because it always seemed so ridiculous how many health issues I always had, and it
Mm,
was kind of an explanation like, "Oh, okay, now I understand
mm,
why I've had all this stuff." Because it sounds like, I mean, before to me it sounded ridiculous. When I tell people all of the medical issues that I've had, to me it must sound ridiculous to other people.
mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
And
then that
there's
makes perfect sense. So when you got the diagnosis, it was more like, ah, now I can actually
right,
now I do now I understand myself why it's like that, and
right.
why these things keep happening to me. And then it's also easier to
Mhm.
explain to people that you have this condition. That okay, it's not just because I'm weird. I
Right.
actually have I
Well,
have
now I
Fanconi
can say I
Anemia,
have
so
a
there's a
rare
reason.
genetic disease, a rare genetic disorder, and it's so
Mhm,
much easier to explain things than to, say, "I've had this cancer and this cancer and this cancer and this
mhm.
cancer and a bone marrow transplant and blah, 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 blah," and then just, like, no explanation for why, but now I can say, "It's because I have this rare
So
genetic."
you had a bone marrow transplantation
Yes, which is weird. So
before they knew. Yeah, that must have been the case.
and they didn't know. Yeah, when I was 8, I had a bone marrow 8 9. I had a bone marrow transplant because I had AML, and you would have thought that back then when I had AML, somebody would have figured out that I had FA. So
Yeah.
I had AML leukemia, and it was my only chance. I actually had the full, chemotherapy, regimen, and I was, in remission, and then I relapsed. And so then I had to get into remission again and
Mhm,
then go to Johns Hopkins, University to have a bone marrow transplant, and it was, like, the last chance I had.
mhm.
I think I was given, like, a 20% chance of living. I mean, this is 1980, I don't even know what, 1980 something, and, so, yeah, I had a bone marrow transplant, but they still didn't know that I had FA.
Realize that, and that you had it that long back. Then you
And
are right up there with me and Matt, and maybe even older than me.
yes, yep,
Because I had mine in '85.
but
I think Matt had 2 years later.
and the other weird thing is
Yeah.
that as long as we're talking about weird things, um, I did not have a donor. They took out my own marrow and treated it and put it back in me. I don't know if they necessarily call that a bone marrow transplant now,
Hmm.
but that's what they called it then.
Okay.
It was still the same thing. I still basically I was my own donor, but
Okay. Yeah.
they used my marrow, took it out, and made it better, and then put it back in.
That
So I
sounds like
still had all the
why?
cancer.
Wow.
Yeah, so I when I mention this to doctors that don't know my stuff, they kinda
Mhm.
look at me funny. Um, you know, I I tried to get answers from my hematologist as to why did that work and was it a bone marrow transplant, but I never really got clear answers from them. But that's what they've always said it was, and I guess it's what it is, but it's not with a donor. It's called autologous bone marrow transplant. Yeah. So when people ask me if I when people in the FA community ask me if I've had a bone marrow transplant, I'd say, well,
Quite
kind
sure.
of. Yeah, technically, but not the same as you probably. But yes, so I had
Yeah,
that.
because most people I never heard about anybody else who didn't get it from a donor.
Yeah, I think it's done. I mean, it's more rare because I don't think they tried to test my brother to see if he was a match, also
Mhm.
not knowing at that time that he also had FA, which maybe him being a donor, I don't know if he would have even worked or that's a very good question. But he doesn't have any medical problems at all. which is a weird thing, and he has the exact same genetic stuff as me. Exactly. But he has had no the only thing he has is short stature.
How old is he?
He is 45. No, wait. I think he's 44 now.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
So, um, it's it's really weird and interesting that he has not had any problems.
Yeah, there's been a very few
He,
cases of that.
yeah, he has
I
kids.
can't remember the name of this lady who's like, I think the oldest right now, who's in her late 60s. I think
Teresa?
that no, not Teresa. No, she's around our age.
Oh, she's
Um,
okay. Yeah, she might be a little older.
and there's Miriam who's also in her 50s. There's I can't remember. She's in the adult FA group,
Mhm.
and she's like way older than anybody else. And yet, as far as I remember, never had any
Mhm.
conditions at all. So there's a few, very, very few outliers,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's kind of a good thing because I'm looking at those outliers and be like, if they can make it, I
Yeah.
hope I can too.
Right? And I've been trying to get him to come to the FA gatherings,
Hmm.
but he has no interest in it because he's trying to live his life. He has two, preteen kid pre well, one preteen daughter and one son a little bit younger.
Hmm.
Um and he's, he doesn't want to think about it. He does go and have bone marrow biopsies once a
Hmm.
year, and he does have like colonoscopy and upper endoscopy and some things like that, just as precaution. But he doesn't. Other than that, he wants to not think about it, and I totally understand. I mean, if I didn't have any medical problems, I probably would be avoiding. I mean, I wouldn't want to know about everybody else's medical problems if I'm not having any.
No,
I
no, no. I
I
fully get
get it.
that. If you feel good and you have no issues whatsoever,
That you don't want to scare
what?
yourself.
No, and to let's be honest. Nobody wants to be a part of this FA life. Not if they had a choice.
No, I know, but I
I
mean, I'm afraid that if something does end up popping up, I wish she would be friend. I mean, and also because all of us are so awesome at the meeting, everybody's awesome, and I want him to
yeah.
meet everyone. And I mean, he's my brother. I want him to. I don't know, but right now it would be too not for him right now. I guess.
Yeah, but it's a choice people have to make, and I can't say to people if it's right or wrong. They have to make those decisions for themselves.
True.
Maybe it's the right thing to do now, and if you go to checkups, that's perfect. But if you try to convince yourself there's nothing and you forget that, then you might have the problem because
Hmm.
as I don't know exactly how it works for him, but as you mentioned, he have kids, and you kind of owe it to them to go and get the checkups.
Yeah, at least he does that, and I
Yeah.
make sure that I inquire about them to make sure he's still doing them and everything.
That's the right thing to do.
I mean, if he wasn't, then we would have words. But
But as long as you do that, I see no problem with it. I get it. I mean, I've been very active in this Fanconi community sometimes, and sometimes I've been taking a break for almost a year because I just
yeah,
couldn't. There was too much. It hurt too
yeah,
much to talk to people, and we have lost too many within a few years, and it was
mhm,
just too much. I had to like push everything away for a bit,
yeah,
except the very few friends I have with FA here in Denmark. But otherwise, also because we live
yeah.
closer by, we know each other's families and stuff like that. But
But you need a
some
break sometimes. Yeah.
yeah, I need a break sometimes too because just it's too much.
Hmm.
Uh, I made this thing for we have this awareness month around May every year,
Hmm.
and I think 1 or 2 years ago I didn't really know what to do, so I just made a short video where I wanted to mention the names of those we lost to give some reasons to why people should donate. And as far as I remember, when I actually sat down and wrote down all the names, in the beginning it was like, I can just memorize them and then just, come up with them. But it was like 22 names in
Hmm.
those short years. I came into this whole world in 2014 because I thought I was cured, and then I figured out I was not. And that happened in 2014. And right after that, I discovered I had cancer. So from there on, it was like not 2014 was not a good year.
Hmm.
So where are we going with this?
So
Um,
did you think that you were cured because of the bone marrow transplant?
yeah, they told me back then
That's
that
a mis
I
Yeah,
was
I think
cured.
a lot of people kind of think that.
Yeah. So yeah. I get why some people just don't want to get too involved because
Mhm.
I mean, that was from 2014 and until last year, 2 years ago. That's like 7 or 8 years time that I lost. No, I didn't lose, but we lost 22 of our fellow FA patients whom I knew. There was a lot of people who also lost their lives. I
Mhm.
just didn't know about. So it really surprised me. It was that many
Yeah.
that I could put a name on and a face on. And I knew I have been there with them to Camp Sunshine or at the adult meetings. We had
Mhm.
we had been sitting there together, shared our stories, eating breakfast, going out for dinners, and it's like, wow, that one hurt when I sat down
Yeah.
and made that. Then
Yeah.
it became all too real. So after you got diagnosed, how did your family take it?
Well, my mom had been deceased, so she would have been the
Mm.
one who would have taken it the hardest probably because it was me and her when I was younger going through my APML that I had and all those years I was in and out of the hospital for that and my bone marrow transplant. um my dad was working a lot, and so it was my mom who mostly took me to my appointments and took care of me all day long and everything. So it was kind of like when I found out, I kind of like in my mind I was saying, "Mom, we finally figured out why." you know Talking to her, just because it felt, I don't know, it felt like it was our problem because we were together so much because of me being not in school and everything, because I was sick when I was little, younger, from 8 to like 12. Um, but my dad was he was dealing with my mom's death, and he did take it somewhat hard, but it was just it was such a mixed bag because of all everything that was happening at that time. And he was I was well into I was well into my adult age, because I was 43. So he just kind of took a back seat. If I was younger, he might have been more actively involved. I mean, but he did all any kind of research that I wanted him to fill out, or they I can't remember. I think the can't remember the names of them, but some of them wanted family history, and he did everything that I asked him to do for filling out all kind of stuff like that. My husband was concerned, um, but he was already concerned because I was already having so many medical problems. So it was like for him too, it was also more like an explanation
Mm.
and not so much of, I mean, if you find out you have FA before you have a lot of problems, then I can see this as a huge, huge cause for concern. But if you already have a bunch of medical problems, and this is just an explanation that it doesn't seem so bad to get the diagnosis, I guess. Maybe that's kind of how I look at it for me.
Mm.
So,
No,
you
no,
know,
I think it makes perfect sense to me at least, because
mhm,
to most people when they actually find out they have FA, they go out, they Google it or something stupid like that. Because I have mentioned this before. Please don't Google it. And I know as soon as I say it, you will Google it or you will go to ChatGPT or something, and you will just like write in there like
yeah,
how it is to live with Fanconi anemia. And I can't stress this enough. What you read is often old news, is old facts, and if it's not, remember a
right.
statistic is just a
Yeah, and
statistic.
any of my family that I told about it, I said, if you Google it,
Mm.
Just know that that information is a little bit outdated. Don't worry about it. It was best not to Google it. So,
No, no, I've talked to some of our Danish families, and when suddenly they're having a small child who get diagnosed with FA, I
mhm,
understand why they're scared
mhm.
like hell after
Yeah.
reading up on it online.
I mean, yeah, and I mean, even after I found out that I had a vein, it felt like an explanation for things. Even it still also felt like, oh gosh, okay, now I know for sure I'm probably going to have more cancers and more.
Mm.
You know what I mean? It was also scary. Even though, I had answered your question before, like it was an explanation, which it was. That was the first, response I had to it. But it was also scary because I knew, okay, it's not over. Things are still gonna happen. It's still gonna, every time I got cancer before, which I've had, I think I'm on number 5 now, I would think before I had FA, I would think, okay, when this one's done, maybe there won't be any more. But now I know that there's probably going to be more. And there's probably going to be more. And when I try to explain this to people, they're like, oh, well, maybe there won't. I'm like, no, no, you don't understand. There is going to be.
Yeah, it's kind of
Yeah.
very, very difficult to explain to people because they're like, "Oh, just because you had cancer, I've only had cancer once. I've had skin cancers, but that doesn't really count like real cancer to me."
Yes, it does.
Yeah, I know it does for to some people, but for a lot of us, it's more like, ah, skin cancer is all right. We can deal with that. Yes, that's not the type of cancer I'm most afraid of.
Yeah.
So it's just like when how can I say this? People don't get get it that we kind of know is gonna happen. To me, it's not about if I will have cancer again. It's just
When?
when,
Yeah.
and that I can't stress that enough. Especially if some of my families or family members or friends outside the FA community listen to this. It's not a question if it will happen. It's just
Yeah.
it's just not gonna.
It's
I don't believe that I can live a full life without getting more cancers.
right.
And I'm
I mean,
pretty sure I know what's gonna end me someday too.
I unfortunately, I think I do too for myself.
And just not to be I'm not trying to be pessimistic about it. It's just like that's the cool facts we have in front of us right now.
Yeah.
Hopefully things will get better. And that is why I support, and you also support, Fanconi Cancer Foundation and other places, because we need a lot of good scientists to look into FA to help
Yes.
us. But I'm not holding my breath. Maybe they can save some of the young people. And I really, really hope they get to that point.
Well, they're ramping up on the research. I mean,
Oh,
it
yeah.
seems like it's gaining momentum, even more momentum.
Hmm.
So I'm hopeful for these things. And I also think, that just this I don't even call it screening. I I don't call it screening for us. It's more like, but I guess it's screening. The more cancer screening they do, early detection. Honestly, if you can get early detected, I mean, if you can detect things early enough, I swear I believe you can get it all. You can get them all. But it's a matter of detecting them early enough, which is why I am extremely extremely vigilant. And if it's a doctor that doesn't is not very familiar with FA, or even if they think they're familiar with FA, they still don't get it. I'm like, no, no, you don't get it. I know that this little thing that I'm telling you about sounds like absolutely nothing to you, like it would be nothing. I'm telling you, on me, it's something.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, well, whatever. I guess they probably think you're being a hypochondriac or hypochondriac, yeah, or something. I don't know, but I mean, it's proven time and time and time and time again.
Hmm.
If I tell you that this thing is a thing, it's a thing. I mean, it's like I have this sixth sense inside of me that can tell you that this little thing on my finger or what I mean, just giving an example. If I say it's a thing, it's a thing because I think something in my brain and my body are somehow subconsciously knowing and telling me that it's a thing. Because that's what happened with my colon cancer. Even though the doctor was like, "Don't worry about this. It's not cancer. I promise." I I'm like I immediately said, "Yes, it is." I didn't say it to her, but I immediately, like, call all the alarms, and
You
guess
know,
what? Yes.
I don't know. You could call it a sixth sense, and you might be right about that because at least in my experience, we know what we're talking about. We know what's going on inside inside our own bodies. I can't explain how, but I've never been wrong either. I always knew when there was something wrong. And even though the doctors couldn't put a number to it and they couldn't test for it, I knew it was right. I knew it
Yep.
was right. My mouth cancer, I've talked about that plenty of times before, but I had a very big argumentation with my head and neck doctor back then because he took a test and it showed there was nothing. But I was like, I need this thing on my tongue to be removed. He was like, don't waste my time with that. I was like, I need this. So we had a very loud argumentation, let's call it that. I told him pretty much to do what the hell I was telling him to do. And he didn't really appreciate that tone. So we had a little back and forth, but he ended up sending me to a hospital to get it removed. And then they figured out, oh, it was in fact cancer. So like, ugh. And I've tried
Yep.
that before in
Oh, it's so frustrating.
with other things like my height. Back then, they took a test once a year to make sure that I was still actually growing, growing taller.
Mhm.
And there was a time where I went there to the hospital after 6 months. I was like, even though I took hormones, I was like, I'm not growing. There's something wrong now. It totally stopped and was like, no, we have plenty of time to do this, but there's something wrong. And then we came back half a year later, and I had been absolutely right. I was 13 at that time, and they were like, oh, we have never seen that gap closer so fast. So, but you're right, you don't have any time to grow in now, even though you take the hormones. So I was like, but I freaking told you.
Yeah. But I mean, I understand from the medical people,
Mm.
I understand their perspective because I'm sure they have tons and tons of patients that say they know, but they don't know. And, you know, but it's hard to try to explain to them. I understand that you have all these patients that think they know and they don't know, but me, I know. But I mean, they're just thinking, I mean, like, I don't know. I feel like we should have some sort of like, I don't know, like a tattoo on us that says, "Okay, this patient knows." I don't know.
Oh, I'm not sure.
Like
As a
something that
two would be
to
a good
identify
idea.
us to other doctors as a patient
Uh,
who knows what they're talking about.
oh, but you know that tattoo would they would look upon it as like, oh, that's one of those people.
Well, no, but it has to be
That is one
something
of those
that you have to
annoying.
go through rigorous. I don't know.
I just imagine you coming into a doctor appointment and they look and they see that tattoo and they'll just be like, oh
Mhm.
no, it's one of them. Oh, now I have to actually listen and answer 1,000 questions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I come to a new doctor, I'm pretty aggressive in sort of like quickly explaining things to them, and sometimes my husband will say, "You need to tone down a little bit because they don't know you and they're gonna think you're nuts right away." But the thing is, I'm like, I don't care if they think that because they're gonna find out the truth. They're gonna figure it out, and then they're gonna know I'm right. And I don't know. It's like, I'll give you for instance. One time I actually fell out of my bed head first
Ow.
onto the back of, yeah. I thought the end of the bed was here, but it was not there. It was like closer. And I fell out. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning. I fell, like, and hit the back of my, like, shoulder, back, whatever,
Yeah.
and I was afraid to move after that, like, I thought maybe I broke something, and so we ended up, calling the ambulance to come get me, and they took me to the closest hospital, which I should have not. I don't know, I didn't know I didn't, whatever, I won't go into that, but they took me to the closest hospital, and the doctor, it being in the middle of the night, in the kind of neighborhood that there might be a lot of drug addicts, kind of, and I said to them that, I mean, they took me for X-ray, there was nothing wrong X-ray wise, but I couldn't get up and walk or move, the doctor was kinda like, "Okay, there's nothing wrong with you, we took an X-ray, you should be fine, get up." She thought I was trying to get drugs, and because what I said was, they said, "Well, maybe we'll get you some muscle relaxers or a pain med." And immediately said, "Oh, I can't take such and such. Do you have any Dilaudid?" And my husband was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe you said that because it sounds like I know my drugs and I want a certain drug." And so it sounded like I mean, so from that time, he gives me such crap for opening my mouth and saying a bunch of stuff because he's like, "Doctors are gonna, if they don't know you, they're gonna think you're,
Oh,
you
she's an
know."
addict.
Yeah, and it wa I mean, that the doctor treated me very, very, I don't know, I never felt so, like, disrespected or I can't even describe it.
Sorry, I'm
She was
laughing, but it is kind of
Yeah,
funny.
it
The,
was kinda funny, but I couldn't move. She was, like, demanding that I get up and get out of the bed, and I'm like, "I
it's like
cannot."
I can't.
I actually did try. When she finally kept demanding it, I started getting up, and she saw how much pain I was in finally, and believed me. But, like, I've never been treated that way at a hospital before, ever. That was the
Oh
only time I was ever treated like that. It was in the emergency room, it was not good experience.
no, it doesn't sound like
I
a
know.
very good
So, like,
experience.
that kind of thing. Shane, my husband is kinda like, "Just chillax a little bit. You don't have to spurt out everything that you know all the time, immediately." Like,
But it's
especially
easy
about
for other
death.
people to say, okay? Because it's our life, and
Mhm.
we're always waiting for something new to happen. So we get kind of paranoid, I think, and often it's because we're right. But you can't help when you know something will happen to you.
Yeah.
You can't blame people for being paranoid, and maybe be a little too upfront regarding it. Yeah, you might think I'm annoying right now, but I have a reason, okay? If I'm right, it's my life.
Mhm.
If you're right, I was just annoying, okay? So live with that, okay? Let's
That's a
just
good way to
test
say
this.
it, actually.
Yeah. So, is it all right if I backtrack a bit? Because you mentioned that you had a lot of things happening in your life. You had some cancers before, and you had the maybe bone marrow transplantation. I don't know what to call it, but you know.
Well, I mean, they call it a bone marrow transplant, and so
Mm,
it's a bone marrow transplant, but
yeah.
since there wasn't a donor, I I don't know. But
No,
anyways,
no.
so then after
But
that,
that was when you were a child,
yes,
as you
I
mentioned.
was 9 when I had that bone marrow
How
transplant.
much?
And it
How
was
did there happen? Was there anything else happening to you as a child regarding these? Did the
No, I mean,
cancer
the
start there,
AML,
or
AML stands for something myelocytic leukemia. So there was that, and that was a whole, I had a lot of side problems from that. The
mm,
chemotherapy they gave me, high dose chemotherapy and everything. It did a number of on my heart, on my kidneys at the time, and my
mm,
liver, and so I have, now I have heart failure, but I didn't have heart failure right away when I was young, but over the years it turned into heart failure.
okay, yeah,
Um, so anyways, I didn't have anything else as a child other than just, side effects from chemo and all
mm,
that. But then when I was 27, I had breast cancer. Um, which was that's really pretty young to have breast cancer, and
yeah,
my mom had it when she was, I think, 58
mm,
or something like that, so, I wasn't surprised. In fact, I remember the moment that I felt the lump. I remember exactly what I was watching on TV.
yeah,
It was kinda like by accident. I'm like, "What is that?" And then I immediately knew, even though I hadn't really had very many medical problems up and from when I was a kid up until that time, um, at least not anything cancer, I I knew, immediately. I'm like, "This is not a cyst. This is cancer. I know it is. My mom had cancer." You know? I didn't even know that I had the BRCA2 yet. I didn't even know that, but I just in my heart, I just knew that it was. Especially since my mom had breast cancer, her mom had breast cancer, and I'm like, "Okay,
Yeah, you kind of
this
knew
is
it
what
was a
it is."
possibility. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I mean, it was in the evening when I felt it, and the next day, of course, I called my, gynecologist, and I went in, like, the next day, and they were saying, "Okay, in 2 it's gonna be 2 weeks before we can do this and that," and I'm like, "No, no." We're I was, like, just calling everybody, and I was living by myself in another state,
Mm,
so I was not telling my parents anything that was going on at the time. I'm like, "I'm gonna find out for sure before I
yeah, yeah.
worry them." So, I you know, I went to my gynecologist who felt it, and then she sent me for, an ultrasound, which they saw it on the ultrasound, and I think I might have had I don't know, it was even the ultrasound lady was like, "Oh, well, you're so young, this is probably just blah, blah, blah." But I'm like, "Whatever, lady. Wha whatever, okay?"
Whatever.
So then I had a biopsy done, like, I don't know, but everything went much faster because they kept bugging people. I'm like, "I'm not waiting, there's no way, I can't wait," you know?
Mm.
So, biopsy, that's what it was. So I had surgery pretty quickly, and, I mean, of course, after the biopsy, when I knew what it was, I called my parents, and then they came up for the surgery, stayed with me throughout that surgery, and then I had chemo, and I tried to keep my job that I had out of state in that area. But, after I say a couple of months, they've basically let me go. They're like they basically fired me, which was messed up because my mom came in. My mom came in and went to the I worked for I was an audiologist, and I worked for a medical practice, and she went to the she came in and yelled at the office manager and said, "What would Jesus do?" This is my mom. This
Are
is
they
my mom.
allowed? Are they even allowed to fire you?
Probably not, but I don't remember. It was weird. It was like they were I can't remember exactly how they twisted it so that they were able to do that. They did, and I don't know. I mean, I ended up moving back home, back to, my parents' house. I don't remember.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
so
yeah.
long
No, no,
ago
no,
that I
no.
don't remember all the details on that, but, their practice actually ended up going out of business pretty quickly after that, and I wanna say it's karma. I wanna just think it's karma, but I don't know.
I get why you feel like that. It's like, yeah, they did me wrong. They can just go to hell. No.
So
Now, if it's all right with you, we'll move into the next section. That is like not the negative section, but it's a thing that most of us think about. That is like we talked about your life up until now, and then now we just dive a little into the thought about death. What do death mean to you? Do you often think about it, or is it something that you try to just avoid thinking about?
well, I try avoid thinking about it,
Mm,
but it creeps itself in there anyways, and um I have it's difficult, as I'm sure you know, to think about it and
mm,
talk about it and really try to evaluate what your own beliefs are around that and what you think could happen. And nobody really knows because once you know, you're dead already and you can't tell anybody. So so that
right.
is a big blank area that is super scary.
Mm,
But I don't know. I go through I've gone through, and I'm sure you have, different phases of being able to think about it or
mm,
not think about it or think about it a little bit more, and then it just kind of you get kind of numb to being able to think about it. And then I don't know how to explain it, but I mean, now I currently have liver cancer, which I do not think that I'm a candidate for liver transplant for various reasons, but I don't know for sure. I don't really want to know right now.
No,
Right
no,
now,
I get that.
it's actually just it's been stable for a year now, not doing anything. So I haven't had to have any treatment for it. I'm trying to, pretend that it's not gonna ever do anything. So
Hmm.
that's why I go to MSK
Hopefully.
every 2 months now to have two MRIs and blah 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 blah, a million appointments.
Hmm.
Um, but it's not currently causing me any problems like the for mentally.
Mm.
So that's got me, when I think about it, I go from worrying about myself and what's gonna happen to, "Oh my god, my husband is gonna be," you know what I mean? Like, thinking about, "Okay, what can I do to prepare my husband for this? Can I pick him a wife to have after me? Like, give him permission to marry this person or that person?" Or, like, I don't know, it's like, what things can I put in place that if I were to go first before I'm not saying that I will. I'm saying that if I did, can I, like, I don't know if you've ever seen John Wick. His wife sends him
Yeah,
a
yeah.
puppy after she dies. She has somebody bring him a puppy.
Mhm.
I mean, we have 5 cats, so that's not needed, but
You don't need extra.
I mean, I these are the things that there's so many different things and different avenues to go down when you think about that. But I guess the biggest thing is sometimes I get absolutely terrified about what actually happens to you.
Mm.
And I
I
don't
get that. I get that feeling.
and
So,
the other thing is I feel like I can't talk about that to anyone. Not even I mean, right now I don't have a therapist, but I did for a while, and I
mhm.
couldn't even bring it up with her because I'm like I was terrified of putting that image into someone else's brain and have them be as terrified as I was. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense, and it's
But I
kind of
mean,
a
I'm sure you've probably had the same
that's kind of
terrifying
a problem
feeling.
with I'm not an expert in therapist. I've never really liked using therapists at all, and the few times I've tried it has not
Yeah.
really been great experience. I've had a few good experiences, but as soon as I had found out I had FA again, quote
Mhm.
unquote, and I had the cancer and I had to deal with all of these things about okay, that's my life now. Now I know I still have FA and all that. I talked to a shrink about it, and she couldn't really accept what I was when I was telling her that
Yeah.
I knew this thing would kill me. She it was like she wouldn't accept that. She, oh, you don't
Yeah.
know that, and that's like
Yeah.
I know
You
you
gotta get
feel
the right person.
uncomfortable talking about it, but I need to talk about it because
Yeah.
that is what.
Maybe we should be each other's therapists.
Yeah, that's probably why we have
That thing
the
maybe.
talks we have every time because we can talk freely
Mhm.
with one another about it. Because I hate that talking about us and them.
Mhm.
But regarding these things, there's us who have FA, and then there's the rest of the world. It's so
Right.
integrated in us, and most of the time, I've talked about this before. I'm I'm not scared of death. I don't want to die at all. But my biggest nightmare in the last few years have been: will my kids get old enough so they can remember me?
Yeah,
And that has been a very big concern for me. And that
I
is like
understand that. Yeah.
even
I
even though I know that they're old enough now, all three of them,
mhm.
it's still as soon as I think about it, I just
Yeah.
that really stings
I think about that
inside.
with my niece and nephew
Mm.
sometimes. Which I think they are old enough now, definitely to but I want, yeah, I totally get it. I mean, I'm not a parent, so I can't totally get it, but I
Mm.
I mostly get it.
I know my wife will do well no matter what. I hope she will be sad just like a few hours or something. But no, she has been through a lot in her life too, and I know she will stand up again. I know she would she will get through it.
Hmm.
And also because of the kids, of course, that will help too. But she's a really, really strong woman, so I have no doubt in my mind that she will get through it somehow. I know she will. I never met anybody so strong. So I'm, I'm, I don't want her to go through that pain, but I'm not like afraid for her, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah.
And she can pick whoever she wants afterwards, as long as they're good with kids, and they that's perfectly
Your
okay.
kids will probably be adults by then.
Maybe, yeah, yeah. I know. I want her to live her life to the fullest,
Mhm.
also
Yes.
after I'm not here any longer. I don't want her to sit back and have a miserable life. No way. I want her to be able to smile and have fun and take the kids out and maybe a new husband someday. I don't know. Just something positive. But yeah, it's weird to think about.
But hey, I'm telling you, your kids are going to be adults.
I hope so. I usually try to set a mark. In the beginning, when I got the first cat, I was like, oh, if I can just live long enough to see his third birthday,
Hmm.
then I'm happy. And then it was like, okay, let's raise the stakes. When that day, I was like, at least until he's 5 and the twins are 3 years old. And now he soon turns 6, and the twins will get to be 3 years old here in like 2 months' time.
Hmm.
And I have no issues whatsoever. So now I'm like,
So now you can.
yeah, I want to
How
see
about
him.
after they get married?
I want to see the oldest at least get to 10 years old, or at least. Yeah.
We can do
So,
it.
yeah. We have to set some goals. We can set goals for our lives too,
Just
okay?
just nip everything in the bud. Anything that happens,
Yeah.
push like hell to get it, addressed and dealt with, and then it's gone. It's just
Hmm.
because our DNA is not repairing itself in certain situations. Just cut it off and be done with it.
Exactly.
Anything that you get, just cut it off and be done.
Yeah, and we know some of our peers have gone through much more than any of us have, and they're
Mhm.
still standing, and they're still
Exactly.
cracking a smile when we see them. I know they have been going through some hard times, of course, when you have a lot of cancers, but just be able to stand tall, smile, have a good laughs, and actually still have that motivation to keep going and still be happy about life. And that will lead us into the third part of the podcast, happiness. What makes you smile? What makes you happy?
Well, lots of things. Um, of course, my husband, my cat,
Hmm.
my dad, who is currently living with us. I would have to say my cats are like therapy for me, though. I mean, I have 5 of them, but seriously, if I'm feeling really badly and I go and pet one of my cats and they don't run away right away, at least they say let me pet them. It's like therapy. So, yeah, and I like to. I mean, right now I'm not working.
Hmm.
I'm actually on disability right now because of everything that I have going on.
Hmm.
Um, and so I've been doing a lot of making things. I do crafty type things. I make things out of resin. I make earrings and bracelets and not out of resin, but the things I make out of resin, I love making skulls. I make these earrings. These are not out of resin, but
Oh yeah, okay, yeah,
I love
yeah.
skulls. I put skulls on everything. And I make, all kinds of things out of resin in my garage with my respirator on and just sit there and pour. And I like focus. I can't focus on anything else while I'm doing it because
Hmm.
you only have a certain amount of time before it sets up, and you have to like really concentrate on it. So it's like my, I don't know, happy place to be doing that. I also like to travel. Um, I especially love going to places that have beaches because I love collecting seashells like like crazy. I mean, I have so many, it's insane, but I could just never have enough.
No sunbathing, right? I mean, you should stay out of the sun, according to all our
I wear
doctors.
sunscreen. I wear sunscreen, and a big hat, and I'm usually mostly covered up with clothes as well. I don't, you know.
Oh, you're smarter than me. Okay. I can't help it. It's just like I don't enjoy going into the water at all, but I just love the beach because of the sand and the sun. Is like,
Yes,
I
and
love
just
it.
it's relaxing. It's beautiful. The colors are awesome.
Just listen to the
It's the
sea and
best.
watch
Yeah.
it. Oh, I love it. Yeah, yeah.
So that would be my happy place, even though I don't live near a beach, which is insane. I'm like, how do I not live near a beach? If I were to ever move, it would definitely have to be for me to go through the hassle of moving. It would have to be definitely too close to the beach somewhere.
That's the good thing about living in a small country.
You
Like I
can
have
still get
like
to the
a
beach.
20 minutes drive to the nearest beach or something.
Oh,
And if I want to go
I'm
to a
jealous.
really big one,
I'm
it
coming to
maybe it's
visit.
like maybe 45 minutes. Like, yeah, okay.
Oh man, I'd be there all the time.
Yeah, we do that in the summer.
I'm gonna look for plane tickets to Denmark now.
Oh, feel free. We will gladly invite for dinner and show you around.
Yay!
So nice. So besides making jewelry and stuff like that, what do you? What else do you do to stay happy? How do you keep going? How do you? I mean, when I have met you, you seem like a positive person. You're quick to crack a smile, and you're just
Yeah,
being very open.
I'm usually pretty positive. Lately I've been sort of not sleeping that well and depressed and stuff like that, but
Mm.
I'm usually, for the most part, pretty positive. Or if I get down, it won't last very long, and I'll be
Mm.
back up and positive. Um, so I mean, I do occasional yoga.
Mm-hmm.
I try to exercise as much as possible, which definitely helps with getting, exercise helps your whatever hormones make your body dopamine, I don't know,
Mm.
something. And just, so I said I love traveling, but I also love planning the trip. Sometimes that takes a long time and a lot of effort and focus to like plan a trip. And I'm like, I might as well be a travel agent. Maybe I'll be a travel agent now. Um, so I like
New
planning
career.
planning trips, going on trips. I also cook, bake.
What do you like to cook?
I I
I love food. Okay, I'm a foodie, so as soon as you mention that, I'm like, ooh,
lately
ooh.
I've been cooking Indian food.
Ah.
I've been learning how to make some Indian food, and also like sometimes I cook like spaghetti, like like normal Italian food and
Mhm.
stuff like that. But I really like doing. I don't do a lot of duplicate. Like when I'm really gonna cook something, I'm gonna like cook something new. It's always something new, and all kinds of cuisines. I like to make Vietnamese food. I like to make Indian food. I like to make Mexican food. I like to make, whatever. All different kinds of things. I try to make as many things that are like vegetarian and vegan as possible, but I mean, just because it tends to be healthier and I get more veggies in that way. But I'm not a vegetarian. I just many of my meals are, that's all. But I do like baking and stuff too, so
A
cooking.
vegetarian food can be delicious too. I'm not a vegetarian anyway, but I sometimes order it when we're out because if it if I read on the menu and it sounds delicious,
Yeah,
I don't need the meat. I love
exactly.
meat, but I don't need it. Like,
Yeah, I some people feel like they have to have meat at every single meal, but it's like you really don't have to.
hmm.
Not that big of a deal. You just, I don't know. I
Yeah,
think,
it was just a sidetrack. It's just I love food, so I had just be
yeah, me
curious.
too.
Yeah.
Me too.
I already wrote to some of the FA friends we have about North Carolina and Charlotte. where do I need to go and find a good dinner when I get it?
Oh, yeah, I haven't looked in there yet. I mean, I haven't really looked for restaurants yet, but I
Mm.
should get we should get on that and figure out a good place for us all to go.
And for people who listen, I don't know when this episode will come out, but we have like in September there's a meetup for adults with FA in Charlotte in North Carolina. So a lot of us will be traveling to there. So for some of us, it's like to me it's like a small vacation, like 5 to 6 days away from the family. So I'm really looking forward to that. That sounds like that almost sounded like I do not like my family. It's not that, but some with three
Well, sometimes
kids
you need some
and a full time job and all. Sometimes it's good to get away for a few days to
yeah,
collect
exactly.
energy.
I get it.
Well, it has been very very fun to talk to you. I know we'll talk to you again in a month from now.
Yeah.
We are recording this in the mid of August, so I'm really looking forward to that. But before we end, is there something you would like to say to maybe other people with FA, maybe the younger people or the parents of FA? Get a message or something you wanna give on to them or
Um,
anything?
well,
I caught you a little off guard. Sorry about that.
I mean, I only the piece of advice to just, follow your gut on any kind of medical issue that you think even have the slightest thought about. Follow it up. Be aggressive if you need to, to get things seen, and just be hopeful, because we don't know when more of medical breakthroughs are going to come through, and never.
Thank you so much for those words, and thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it, Faith.
Thank you.
And to the listeners out there, you it will help us a lot if you share these stories that we have with other people. So please share the podcast with family and friends, and if you can, and if you're able to, it would also be nice with a donation to Fanconi Cancer Foundation or whatever local Fanconi Foundation you have. But that would be appreciated a lot. But please go and like and subscribe, and maybe give a 5-star rating if you like the podcast, because it helps us reach more people so more people can hear about our situation and where we're at regarding FA. So that will really, really help me and help us big time. Thank you. Take care out there.